Oh my god, my hips are like killing me. Oh, was that gross? Because it felt really good. I don't think that's supposed to happen. Or that. In this video, I'm going to share 7 minimalist friendly tips that help keep my life simple, or maybe 7 simple tips that help keep my life minimal. I don't know if there's a difference, but let's get into it. Habit number 1 is sticking to a neutral color palette when it comes to my clothing in particular, but really to everything in my home. So personally, my favorite colors to wear and the color that most of my wardrobe fits into is gray, black, white, and a little bit of blue, mostly in the form of denim. I know there's a lot of people who will consider that to be very boring, and that's okay, I respect your opinion, but those are just the colors that make me feel the most me, the most comfortable, and that's been the case long before I ever considered myself to be a minimalist, or really before I ever even knew that word. Gray has always been my favorite color, and for all you like art students out there, don't correct me, I know gray's a shade or a tone, not a color, whatever, but it's just the color that I feel happiest and most comfortable in, and as a result, it is the color that I gravitate to the most when it comes to shopping for clothing or textiles or bedding or painting my walls or whatever else. If gray and white are not your thing, that's totally okay, but by sticking to a somewhat consistent color palette, meaning if you really like purple, sure, stick to purples. If you like blues or reds, stick to blues or reds, but by sticking to something that is somewhat consistent, it just makes life so much easier because everything you have matches with everything else. You never have to worry about if your outfit is clashing or looking weird. You don't have to overthink it when you get dressed in the morning. And again, even shopping for textiles and bedding, your room will always look cohesive and always look good because it's simple and it matches, and it's something that I find just makes my life a lot less complicated. Habit number 2 is batch cooking meals. Personally, my work week tends to be quite hectic and it's usually quite late by the time I get home at night, minimum 8 p.m., sometimes even 9 or 9:30 p.m. And needless to say, that is not the best time of night to start cooking myself an elaborate meal and making a huge mess in the kitchen. I'm usually really hungry by then, I'm usually really tired by then, and the last thing that I want to do is make a huge mess that I have to clean up and wind up eating dinner at like 10 p.m. So on the weekends, on my days off, I tend to take it upon myself to batch cook a couple different meals, usually 2 or 3 things that I can keep in the fridge or in the freezer that reheat well, that allow me to just have really quick, healthy, hearty, delicious dinners throughout the week. Some of my favorite things to make are like a spaghetti sauce from scratch, or I made enchiladas this past week, which were delicious. I've made pasta ai fagioli. Sorry if I'm butchering that, I'm definitely not Italian, but it translates to pasta and beans. It's essentially like a stew that's kind of like minestrone soup, but thicker and heartier and delicious. Sometimes I make curries, but by doing this type of thing, it just prevents me from reaching for what I call microwavable bullshit, which is basically like frozen, pre-made garbage food that makes me feel like crap and is salty and not very satisfying. Basically, it all just comes down to preparation. It is so nice to come home when you're tired and you're hungry and just open the fridge and know that in 5 minutes you're gonna have something amazing heated up and ready to go, and you can just throw your plate in the dishwasher and then relax. Habit number 3 is one that I started doing a few years ago, and it is requesting no gifts from my friends and family. If my birthday is coming up, or the holidays are coming up, or people are coming over for some reason, I'm very clear with them that I really don't want them to bring gifts. I know a lot of people say that to be humble, like, oh, it's okay, you don't have to bring anything, and that's not what I mean. I mean, like, I literally don't want you to bring anything. Or I specify that if you really insist and you genuinely do want to bring something with you, to bring a consumable, something ideally that we can enjoy together as a group, but at least something that I can use up and put to good use and then get rid of. So good examples would be things like a nice bottle of wine, or some cookies, or some snack foods, fancy hand soaps or dish soaps, basically just practical things that actually have a use, and more specifically, they can actually be used up so that they serve a purpose and they're not just lying around collecting dust and making me feel bad about the fact that I don't want them but that I can't get rid of them. And so consumables are always best, but I really do specify to people that they shouldn't feel weird about showing up empty-handed to my house. They shouldn't feel bad about it. That's my preference. If there was something that I needed them to bring or wanted them to bring, I would be very open to saying, hey, can you do me a favor and grab this or grab that? But aside from that happening, I really prefer that people don't bring anything but themselves, come hang out, have a good time, and then go home and don't leave me with more stuff that I have to deal with. I don't mean for that to come across sounding unappreciative for the people who do bring gifts. I know that the intention is good, but I do believe that there's a lot of obligation in that feeling, and I don't like to feel obligated to other people, and I certainly don't want them to feel obligated to me. So I think when you can just have an open conversation about your intentions and about the way that you actually feel about the situation, and tell people that no, you don't have to feel obligated, don't feel weird about it, this is my request, people are a lot more open-minded to respecting that and not feeling awkward about it. Habit number 4 is keeping surfaces clear. This would include things like my kitchen counter, my coffee table, my dresser, basically any surface that has a likelihood to become cluttered where you tend to just drop things. I make a very concerted effort not to do that, and there's a few reasons for that. For me, the main reason is that I honestly just find clutter to be really overstimulating. I find it to almost be a little bit anxiety producing, and when I come home and my house is clean and tidy, I just feel so much more refreshed. When I wake up in the morning and I go downstairs and there's nothing where it shouldn't be, it feels great. I feel like I can get my day started without this lingering feeling of something that needs to be done. I do find for sure that my mental state is very much tied to the state of my home, and it goes both ways. So if I'm in like a depressed mood, if I'm not feeling great, my house does tend to get a little bit more cluttered, and then that makes me feel even worse, and then I'm even less likely to keep on top of it. Where on the flip side, when I'm having a good day, I'm in a good mood, things are tidy, things are clean, and having them clean and tidy helps to perpetuate that good mood. So there really is, at least for me, a big connection there, and the cleaner I can keep my home, the better off I feel as a whole. Additionally, it's much easier to clean the house when there isn't stuff all over the place. It's much easier to just like wipe down the counters or wipe down the table when there isn't stuff that I have to move out of the way and then clean it and then put it all back. And so it just makes the task of cleaning so much faster and so much more painless. And if I do decide to have guests over, especially on short notice, I don't have to panic and feel like embarrassed or feel like I have to race around cleaning everything up before people get here, because my house is pretty much just good to go as it is, and I can just enjoy my company and not have to worry about all the stress leading up to the occasion. Habit number 5 is one that's really important to me, and it's going for long walks. In my case in particular, I do this with my dog Levi. It is honestly one of my absolute favorite things to do. I haven't always been a huge walker, but I started getting really into it a number of years ago when I realized that Levi had gained a couple extra pounds, and I became very determined to help him shed that weight and be as healthy as possible. And while initially my intention was just to help him lose weight, it actually wound up doing so much more for me than I ever could have imagined, especially as far as my mental health is concerned. I found that walking became like my form of meditation, just going out with him and having some fresh air and some peace and quiet. I don't take my phone, I don't listen to like podcasts or anything. I don't really like going with other people. I just go with him and just breathe deep and enjoy the fresh air. And I find that it helps to clear my mind, it helps to put me in a better mood, it helps me to feel like I've just done something of purpose with my day, even if I have nothing else on the go. And admittedly, here in Toronto, we get really harsh winters, and I'm not good about the cold, and I struggle to get outside in the winter months. And I do find that it puts me in a pretty terrible mood overall. I get seasonal affective disorder, which is made worse by the fact that I'm not going outside, and I'm not going outside, and I feel grumpy, and it's this snowball effect, no pun intended. But going for a walk, as long as the weather is permissive and as long as it's nice outside, for me is one of the most important things for my mental clarity. And it just helps me to feel like I've started the day on a good note or ended it on a good note, or if I'm really lucky, both. And it gives me kind of the oomph to come home and do the things that I need to do, or to go to work and not feel at least like all I've done that day is go to work. Number 6 is a really important one, and it's one that I'm still continuously working on getting better at, and it is saying no. Nope. Nope.
How about no?
I tend to be a bit of a people pleaser, and that's a weird thing for me to say because I'm actually not a people pleaser at all, but I don't really like confrontation, and so I tend to default to just going along with the easy answer, even if it's not the right answer for me. And I always regret it. I always resent the fact that I didn't have the guts to say no to the things I wanted to say no to, or to put my own needs in front of someone else's just for the sake of avoiding confrontation. And so I've been getting better at this, and it's saying no to things. That can mean saying no to a client that I know is going to be a pain in the ass. It can mean saying no to a social event that just doesn't sound like a good time to me. It can mean saying no to pretty much anything that just fills me with a sense of dread. So I tend to have the attitude of, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. If somebody says something to me like, hey, can you do this, or do you want to come to this, or whatever, and my immediate response in my gut isn't like, oh yeah, that sounds great, it's going to be a no from me. Initially, it can definitely feel a little bit uncomfortable and a little bit awkward to decline somebody's request or somebody's invitation, but that moment of awkwardness, that moment of discomfort is nothing compared to the hours or days or weeks or months of regret and self-loathing and misery and resentment that you feel when you agree to something that you didn't really want to agree to, and now you feel like your back's against the wall. Saying no is a lot like flexing a muscle. Like at first it's pretty tough and you don't really know how to do it, and then the more that you do it, the easier it becomes, and then you don't really have to think about it at all. So by saying no to things and putting myself first in situations that I know that I need to put myself first in, I sleep better at night and I breathe easier, and my life is just a lot less stressful and a lot less unhappy. And speaking of sleeping better, habit number 7 is sleeping in. I know this is one that people don't talk about often in these types of videos. In fact, this space on YouTube tends to be notorious for like the wake up early, get the worm, grind, yada, 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 get up at 4, 5, 6 in the morning, hit the gym. Listen, if that works for you, all the power to you. That sounds like a living nightmare to me. Not gonna happen. I like my sleep, and I find that my natural circadian rhythm does best. I feel best when I go to sleep sometime between 1 and 2 a.m. and I wake up between 9 and 10 a.m. Admittedly, I am very fortunate to be self-employed, which allows me to curtail my work schedule around my preferred sleeping hours. So I know I mentioned that I work late into the evening, but that's because I don't start work till about lunchtime. Point is, nothing is getting me out of bed at that time in the morning. If the early bird gets the worm, the early bird can have the damn worm. I think worms are gross. Not interested, it's not for me. But sleeping in is something that I find to be so important, and I think that we all as individuals have our own rhythm, have our own sleep schedules that our bodies would default to given the opportunity, and this desire to wake up early, or in some people's cases, fairly enough, the need to wake up early for work or family obligations, I think that it puts such a damper on your mental stability, your mental health, and ultimately even your physical health. On a day off, I might sleep until 11 a.m. and guess what? I don't feel bad about it. I definitely feel a little bit better if I can get up a little bit earlier, but I don't feel bad about the fact that I've woken up late because apparently my body needed the sleep, and sleep is so important. I think it's just as important as food and water, and if somebody intentionally deprived themselves of food, we would call that an eating disorder. Well, I think there's a lot of people who have a sleeping disorder. I think there's a lot of people who take pride in how little sleep they can get by on, and it's just not for me. I think it's important to eat well, I think it's important to drink water, and I think it's just as important to sleep well and sleep a lot, and I don't think it's something that anybody should feel bad for. Much like going for a long walk, sleeping in helps me to start my day feeling fresh and rejuvenated and like I have the energy to do the things that I need to do. And so even though I might actually be awake for fewer hours per day than some other people, I would argue that I can be twice as productive because I'm well rested and I'm focused and I'm clear-headed, and I can't get anything accomplished if I don't sleep well. I am a nightmare to be around. These 7 habits are all things that I try to be as consistent as possible with because I find that they really affect my overall mood, my overall well-being, and how I'm able to approach the day on a regular basis. But of course, these are just the things that work for me, and they may not work for you. Maybe you have a whole set of different habits of your own, and if so, I would love to know what they are. So drop me a comment down below and let me know what habits you stick to help keep a simple life, to keep your life minimal and straightforward, and to help you focus on the things that you actually want to focus the most on. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so yet so you can follow along with all my other videos. Follow me on Instagram at according_to_Nicole. Other than that, thank you guys so much as always for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next week. Take care.